Welcome to Aurora Connects, Season 4. This is Episode 8 for Friday, March 18th, 2022. Cleavon Smith. I'm Monique Williams, Associate Artistic Director at Aurora Theater, and as always, I am joined by our Artistic Director, Josh Costello. Hey, Josh.
Hey, Dawn. It's been a big week at Aurora this week.
Oh, it's been a huge week.
Yeah, lots going on. I'm really excited to share about it. And next week's a big one too.
Yeah. So, as always, friends, we want to hear from you. So do feel free. We are live this week. So do feel free to comment in the chats, and we'll take your questions here live. And of course, you can always email us at connects@auroratheater.org. That is connects@auroratheater.org. We are planning Season 5 as we speak to you, so we love hearing your thoughts and feedback, and want to know what content excites you and who you want to hear from in our community.
Yeah, and we have just yesterday announced our 31st season, our 2022-2023 season. There's some amazing plays in there. I'm so excited to share them with all of you. We also still have 3 plays left in our 2021-2022 season, and all of the information about those plays is available on our website at auroratheater.org. You can still get a subscription for this season. You could get a subscription now for next season. You could get single tickets for the play we're going to be talking about today, The Incrementalist, with Cleavon Smith, and the rest of these really remarkable plays that we're going to be presenting live in our space with an in-person audience. So please, again, go to auroratheater.org to check that out. And while you're there, if you are so moved, you can click the donate button at the top right and give us a little support to help us get through what continues to be a very challenging couple of years. Thank you so much.
And Josh, do you want to say a couple words about Aurora's very new managing director, Francesca Gabourel?
I am so excited to welcome Francesca to the Aurora family and the Aurora community. She is amazing, and she just started last week, so she just wrapped up her second week as our managing director after a big nationwide search. She is coming to us from KQED Live Events. She's also worked at your Buena Center and ODC Dance, and she just has a really wonderful way of communicating, and she's a very calming presence. She's just been wonderful so far, and I'm so thrilled for her to get to meet all of you. And I'm sure we will be having her as a guest on Aurora Connects at a future date.
Absolutely, we will. And Monday night at Aurora, live in person in the building, we will be hosting one of the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival readings from the BIWOC, Black, Indigenous, and Women of Color Plus reading series. It will be Ida's Never Again. That starts at 7 p.m. Tickets are free, but you do need to register. So if you stick around after this episode, we are gonna run some more information about the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival in total, with some special information about this upcoming reading on Monday night that's happening at Aurora Space, and some of the other readings that we will be hosting between now and the end of May. So I hope you stick around for that video segment as well.
All right. And Dawn, you're directing one of these readings, aren't you?
I am directing the very last reading of the whole festival for this year, The Courage to Right a Woman's Wrongs by Ana Caro. It's a Spanish golden age, and it will happen right there in our building on Monday, May 30th. And it will feature some delightful actors from the Bay Area, and it will close out the festival. But that one is part of the classical reading series. Aurora's only hosting 1 play from the classical reading series and 3 from the BIWOC reading series. So more information will come regarding that reading as well.
Great. I love it when we can partner with other organizations that are doing good work in the community. And so pleased to welcome the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival into our space once again.
Absolutely. And we look forward to continuing our partnership with them well into the future. 23, 24. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. So for today, I'm so excited that our guest is Cleavon Smith. Of course, we've had Cleavon on the show before. He talked to us about the flats once upon a time. And today we're here to have him on to talk about The Incrementalist, which starts rehearsals on Tuesday. Thanks. So I'll get him on, Josh, while you go ahead and make an introduction.
All right, Cleavon, welcome to Aurora Connects.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Cleavon is the recipient of Aurora's Originate and Generate Commission for his play, The Incrementalist, which starts rehearsals next week. Previously, Cleavon co-wrote the audio drama, The Flats, for Aurora. As playwright in residence at Berkeley's Theater First for 3 years, he wrote and produced 6 new works. Additionally, Cleavon has had a multitude of short plays performed by theaters in Ann Arbor, Berkeley, Los Angeles, Oakland, San Francisco, and San Jose. Cleavon, you live in Oakland and you teach English at Berkeley City College. It's so nice to see you again and have you on the show. Can you start by just telling us a little bit more about yourself? Where are you from and how you ended up in the Bay Area?
Oh, that's a long story. I'm going to try to keep it short, though. I'm from Mississippi originally, Northeast Mississippi. Some people may be familiar with Tupelo, right there in that corner between, Alabama and Tennessee, tucked up in there in the hills. And went away to school, went to Naval Academy, and served in the Navy 5 years after that. My last duty station was in the Bay Area. And I got out here and got spoiled by the weather and fresh produce in the winter and decided to stay and have been, kind of hooked into the community since '98.
Yeah, and you've written some really great plays in that time. And I'm just so taken with your writing, with the way that you put characters together and the way that you are able to get at big ideas and also have characters just feel so human and feel so passionate about what they're doing and the sort of flights of language that they can go on. It's all just really wonderful to be in the theater when actors are saying your words. I really love it.
Thank you. It has, it has been, like a lot of fun getting to know some of the actors that I've been working with. I would say that I still feel that I'm an apprentice, I'm still learning. And the plays that I've been seeing locally and the actors I've been working with have really just informed what I even can think of, what can happen on the stage. And I've been lucky to work with incredible directors like Don and Graham Smith, who have and Michael Gene Sullivan, who have embraced my writing and also have taught me tremendous things.
Yeah, well, when we commission one playwright per year with our Originate and Generate new play development program. And when it came time to select a playwright last year, we had been talking with you about this before. And since working with you on The Flats and having seen your work, it was just such an obvious choice to commission you to write this play. Can you tell us a little bit about The Incrementalist and what it's about? What made you want to write this particular story?
Yeah, The Incrementalist is, in a lot of ways, is about that struggle when we all have our own internalized ways of holding institutions and one another accountable to the values that are important to us, and we have and as we internalize it, we have our own sense of how do we create a rubric to judge along the way, as well as create timelines, and everybody's not always on the same page with that, and how do we hold the integrity of ourselves as well as the integrity of the institutions, and most importantly, the relationships that we have all along the way. So those were some of the questions that I had going into the project, and I think those are some of the questions that we'll be working on, that the characters are working through, from the very beginning through the end of the play. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm kind of like pausing on it because it is not the play that I originally started to write. It is very far from the play that I originally wrote. The first draft that I gave to you all, but I had to get there. I had to go where I was before, work some of those things out to discover what the play was, to be in that place where it's like, oh, nothing's happening here. I feel good about some of the things I've said, but I'm not sure if anybody outside of myself will have enjoyed spending the last hour and a half or so, however long it may be, engaging with this show. And I was privileged to be a part of the Originate and Generate process because I'm not sure if I would have been afforded the kinds of readings, the table reads, several hours of time with Dawn, with the actors, to give voice to the play, to raise questions that really helped me figure out, okay, what is it I'm trying to do, as well as to learn the voices of the characters, how they were distinct from me and from one another.
I got tripped up because I was muted, but I was gonna say that the play has gone through a lot of iterations, and I remember from the very first time that we met, we had a conversation about cancel culture, and I love watching how that thread is still present in the play, but it's not the prevailing theme. And one of our questions that we have here, to ask you is about the multiple title changes. And in the recent weeks, I, as the director, have been talking more and more and more about the play to people. And the more I talk about the play, the more satisfied I am with The Incrementalist as the title for this play. And I think about the journey of all the titles. Could you say a little something about what that was for you? The title changes, that journey. When does the title come to you?
So the title changes. I'm the worst at giving titles to my stories, by the way. It's one of those things where I wish I could just hand over the document and let someone else just give me a title and I will go with it. And that would be fine by me. And so I can't remember where in the process we were, but something had to be announced and I needed a title. I needed a title desperately. And for whatever reason, and this was also during, when it was also, I think it was 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, when we were having those evenings with Don, and Don would take us through, August Wilson plays. And Ma Rainey, I was, I had read Ma Rainey, but I had never seen it live. And then I watched the Netflix version of Ma Rainey, and in that one moment, and the expressions like, that's what we're waiting to find out. And that was the first title. And that's what we're waiting to find out is like, okay, what's going to happen? What are we going to, in the stories like the Black man, and how are we as Black people going to find our way in this country? And how are we going to go about that? And that idea, that's what we're waiting to find out, was in a lot of ways what the characters were grappling with in the story, and kind of the outcome of the story could be an answer to that question, like, what are we waiting to find? We're waiting to find out. But as I, with more time with it and feeling what the characters were working against, it became kind of obvious to me that the biggest struggle in the story was radical versus incremental change. And in all of the characters at some point, and Don, you really helped me clarify this for myself, all the characters at some point are struggling and try with that concept, with that dichotomy. And each of them at some point embraces this idea of incremental, whether it is because of their interpersonal relationships, whether it's because of their professional identities, whether it's because of, just their sense of what can be accomplished. And And in a lot of ways, I landed with that because that is something, it has both a negative and a positive kind of connotation. And I'm like, okay, I can center myself around this idea to help me with the feedback that I'm getting from the actors, from other people who are reading the play, so as to kind of direct my revision process. So the other title,
there's another title at one point in there.
I don't even want to. What was the
More
other
often
title?
than not.
More often than not for a while.
More often than not. Yes. More often than not.
Yeah. And I remember when there was no title, when it was just like brackets, working title.
I think you landed on a great one. And I love that the theme that you ended up really exploring in this play is this idea of incremental change versus radical change, because I love that is an argument that is happening in our community in a lot of different areas. And I love also that this is not a play about like, well, here's the right and here's the left, and they both have good points, right? That it's an argument between people who are all on the left, right, who all want the same thing, and it's an argument, how are we going to actually get there? And I find that to be so much more useful as a story, and so much more useful as an audience member to be grappling with that question. I find it really powerful.
Thanks. It's definitely one that's urgent for me in the relationships that I have every day outside of this particular story. And so, obviously I'm just, trying to figure these things out for myself so that I can be a better, I can be in better relationship with the people who I find, that I have a lot of affinity and love for.
And that for me is one of the things that's so beautiful about the play, is that it is wrestling with big ideas. It is wrestling with like political leanings and ideologies, and like this big idea of change and radical change or incremental change, or is there a radical middle? But it's all unfolding through a series of actual intimate dialogues. It's all unfolding through interpersonal relationships. Like Josh says, these are people all on the left. It's not even, and yes, and these are people that love one another. These are people that have deep, meaningful relationships. They have shared histories. And that is what's so beautiful, is that what does it mean when you just sit down with your best friend, with your college roommate or whatever, and have to really unpack just even feelings of change. I mean, I just this morning was in a conversation with one of the actors in the play, actually, where they were like, yeah, we're going to a movie theater where they check your Vax card. And I was like, they're checking Vax cards at movie theaters? And he was like, yes. And I was like, I really wish that would go away. And I'm like triple boosted, but I'm like, I just really wish that. So even just that those big polarizing things, but between best friends having a conversation about how we feel about these things, when otherwise our worldviews aren't radically different, but getting down to the details. Yeah, it's a beautiful play. Well, I'm biased.
Cleavon, can you tell us a little bit more about the actual characters in the play and the relationships among them?
Yes, and so there is the character that I started with and spent a lot of the time originally focusing on is Thomas, who is in his 50s. He has written a pretty well accepted, really a popular kind of like book about holding difficult conversations in a post-Trump America. And it has been well received because it addresses those ideological differences and tries to focus specifically on the values that we may share across different ideological. I'm going to stutter on this word now that I've started. Ideological, spectrums. And he's the best friends. He was an undergraduate friend with Nina, who is the vice chancellor of student affairs at UC Berkeley. And Nina is a first generation college graduate who's raised in New Orleans and has made it for herself and has gone from teaching poetry into administration, because that is where she hoped to have the biggest effect on education institutions in the lives of young people of color. And so they meet because of the book that Thomas has just published, and Nina comes and she's with him in celebrating that. And nonetheless, and then, things are going on at UC Berkeley. They have, this kind of right-wing speaker has come to UC Berkeley and has really exposed a lot of the tensions, racial tensions at the campus. And with that, one of the officers from the Black Student Union at UC Berkeley, in protesting this person's appearance, was beaten by campus police. And because of that, Nina now needs to do a full court press on racial tension at UC Berkeley. She invites Thomas into town to help hold some campus dialogues, and the BSU decides, or those officers from the BSU decide, that actually these dialogues are perpetuating the problem rather than resolving the problem. And at that point, they struggle with whether they will participate or not. So I'm sorry. The two college students are Raz, who is the one who was beaten at the protest, and who is also really a strong individual. Their sense of the timeline for holding the institution accountable is really short. Their sense that the timeline is up. It's not short in the sense that this has been centuries in the making. And so because it has been centuries in the making, we can't hold off any longer. And their comrade, another officer of the BSU, is Miriam, and Miriam is incredibly supportive of Raz. And Miriam is the kind of person who is going to do their best to make the situation and the moment or the space light. But in doing so, still has a very strong and firm sense of herself and of the relationships that she wants to foster and maintain. So the four of them come together. We find out that Raz and Nina have a little bit of history beyond just UC Berkeley as well. And yeah.
I love how rich all those relationships are, and how it's an real intergenerational story. And everybody has a slightly different perspective, or a radically different perspective. But again, like Dawn said, they love each other, they care about each other, and they genuinely want to make things better. And I feel like having that story set on the UC Berkeley campus is just, and a story that does what Dawn was saying, that it gets at big ideas through these personal relationships, is just exactly what I think is so exciting about the Originate and Generate program, that we can commission plays that speak so powerfully to our community in the moment we're in.
And Cleavon, I know for me, a real point of pride has been being involved with this production since its inception. And I know there are some directors whose whole bread and butter is new plays, but for me, I've been on the development journey with some plays, like a reading before it's after it's already had a first reading, and before it's been handed off to another director for production. And so for me to have really been with this play before there were words on the page has been a true gift. And I wonder if you would just say more, even to what Josh was getting at, what the process of of working with Aurora over, gosh, I mean, the first time we sat down at that round table was well before COVID.
Right.
What the process has been working in partnership with Aurora to develop this play over time.
I think first and foremost, so much of writing is in a vacuum, and it's just like you do it and you hope that somebody one day will actually, be generous enough to give you time to read it, and we do it, and that's fine. That's just a part of the process. But to have that relationship prior to knowing that, hey, if I get this done, somebody's going to read it. I know somebody's going to read it. That in and of itself was like this incredible motivator, and it motivated me, and it also gave me a sense of, like I was accountable to someone other than myself, and I knew it wasn't all for naught, kind of thing. And then specifically with Aurora, like I have brought students to Aurora plays for years now, and I have been going to Aurora plays. I have been an usher at Aurora for seasons when, like just trying to like save money here and there and try to get as many plays in different places. And so I've been an usher at Aurora. And so I know that space. I love that space. I think the very first show I saw at Aurora was The Persians, and who knows what season that was, but just seeing a play in that space and knowing how like intimate the setting is, also kind of like gave me a sense of, I could hear the words from these characters echoing off the different corners of that space. And so I had it wasn't an abstract sense of a stage. I had a very specific space that I was writing to. So that was extremely helpful, because it's one of those things that I, unfortunately, at this stage in my writing, I hadn't given that much consideration to the actual space. And part of it is because I don't know what space is going to land in. So that part of the process with Originate and Generate was extremely helpful. Yeah. And so and I'm not sure if I'm getting at your question exactly though, Don. But so those were some of the things that were extremely helpful, that informed the writing, informed the process. Having deadlines, having expectations, always helpful.
I think you're answering the question brilliantly, beyond what I could expect, to hear you talk about what it means to write a play for a space, and how knowing the architecture of a space or the strengths and weaknesses of a space, how that can inform your writing process. And even just the beauty in hearing a playwright say, writing it knowing that somebody's going to read it. That exchange, that just like if you write it, somebody will read it. Because I have to say, as Aurora's literary manager, I get a lot of unsolicited scripts, way more than I can get to in a season, probably in a lifetime. And so we try and encourage people, like, send us a sample, but don't send us the whole thing. And I know that every literary office in the country feels bad that they can't possibly get to all the scripts that are being sent. So just to hear from a playwright that part of the commissioning exchange is that I will write it and someone has a commitment to me that they will read it. I mean, how beautiful, and such an overlooked part of the relationship that we can build. Yeah, absolutely. I love that answer.
One of the things I love about this program too is that the playwright is paired with a director early in the process as well, and that being able to put you two together and know that there was a collaboration happening from the very beginning, and a relationship that existed and then is deepening and is growing with the project and is informing the project. I think that's a really I think that's a great way to make a play, right? That the director and the playwright are, I've done a lot of new plays, and that process has been so fulfilling, and has led to better work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, on both sides, right? I feel like I do a better job directing a play when I am like so in on what the plan is, what the playwright wants to do. I tell me about your relationship, your friendship. What have you come to particularly appreciate about each other, or what's your working relationship like?
I'll start.
Please do.
I have like I knew some of Dawn's work, but we hadn't been in conversation much. We hadn't spent any time other than that table, the round table, several years ago, where we're just like throwing off ideas and experiences and things that Dawn had shared about what her daughter has introduced, ideas that her daughter's introduced to her. And I think, no knock on any other director that I've worked with at all. It is just really wonderful experiences. But what I've appreciated about Dawn specifically has been just like Dawn's eye for the subtleties in my writing is one of those things where, like, as a writer, you don't know, how do you say that, hey, I'm trying to be, I don't want to overwrite. I'm trying to be a little subtle, and I'm trying to like see how much I can come across without saying so many, without using so many words. That's what I'm trying to do. But, it just sounds like a very insincere kind of way of like beginning a working relationship. And what's really wonderful is putting it out there, seeing what the response is, and being in the room when Dawn is talking to the actors, and this is Dawn's space, and just trying to like be in the background as much as possible, and to hear Dawn call out and pull out and draw from the actors and draw from the writing, like certain nuances and in certain aspects of the character. And I'm just like sitting here like, just like, and I'm trying my best not to just like growl and giggle, because I'm like, holy fix it. And I'm like, I didn't even know that. And so it's been wonderful in that way. And then also, like Dawn is a professional and she has a lot of like skill. And all of that experience being brought to the story, and just like, okay, what I'm seeing and I'm thinking, we haven't gotten to the production just yet, but here's what I'm thinking. Just to even know that as I'm rewriting, it's like, oh, here are some possibilities. And here's where like, I can, like Dawn's strength is this, and I can write towards these strengths. And knowing that is only going to make the play, the story, the experience for the audience that much better. So it's a part of the writing that I never knew was critical to be mindful of and intentional about, is that relationship as I hand the story off, and as the story, just gets, literally owned, by these other professionals. And there's a great deal of confidence that I have grown to have over these last couple of months, knowing that Dawn was there. Dawn has been, I'm going along because there's so much more I can say. But Dawn hasn't been, knocking on my door, do this. And I think there was one email that I wrote to you, Dawn, like, ha. Thank you very much for like, you've let me run this chain all the way down in this direction. But now I'm going to come in this other direction. And so in a way, I felt Dawn's presence as I was rewriting, even when Dawn wasn't in direct communication with me. And so, yeah, that's a blessing.
Cleavon flatters. Cleavon is a poet, and poets are my favorite playwrights because I'm such a word junkie, and I love language, at like the sentence level. So when Cleavon says, oh, Dawn can call out these nuances, it's because I love mining the text for those little things. I love how words work. And I love, because I often think of actors as my primary collaborator, probably why I don't make my bread and butter to new plays, because I love actors so much. And so sometimes I, favor what the actor wants. And in a new play process, you have to kind of balance that. But I love how actors can shape sound and how they can use phrasing, and Cleavon writes very musically. I mean, one of the things that we talked about are in these different scenes. He uses the word resonance in the script, which is such a beautiful kind of musical term that I glommed onto. So, and for me, it's been a gift working with Cleavon, because he, in the same way I am not heavy-handed, he is not heavy-handed. Like because I'm not prescriptive. And so I know there are directors when they work with a playwright on a new play really are like, well, what if we took this out? And that's just really not my approach. So my approach is to be like, here's how that can play. Here's an interpretation. Here's how I hear that. Here's how I see that. Is that right? Is that wrong? You hate it? You better tighten up the play. I went too far afield. You better fix it in the writing. That's my approach to prescription, right? Is to just like, well, if I really botched it, then you need to make it director proof. That's your job, is to make it director proof. And so for that, I feel like Cleavon and I really have a resonance. Yeah. That he's willing to sort of vibe in the room, and I'm willing to sort of vibe in the room, and to sort of be fed by what he wants to hear and what his process is. And then the only work I know how to do is to keep moving forward with the actors. So it's like, Cleavon, do you have changes? No? Great. We'll keep moving forward, and then we'll check in again if this is what you want or don't want, or if it's coming to fruition the way you imagined. And I love that I had a professor in grad school who told me the first one is for the writer. And I mean, I wasn't old, so I can't say, I wish somebody had told me earlier, but that was the feeling I had. I was in my early 30s, and I was like, gosh, I wish somebody had told me that before, that the first one is for the writer. So for the last decade or so, I've just carried that like the first one is for the writer. And because I do a lot of plays by dead people, like centuries dead people, like Shakespeare dead, I don't have to be worried about, is it for the writer? But when I'm working in a new play, I want to make sure that I'm trying to serve up what the writer was looking for, while also showing them or revealing what maybe they didn't know was there, or what a particular interpretation could look like. So yeah, and I'm a nerd about things that writers might like, literally like, no, girl, that's a typo. And I'm like, but are you sure that that's a typo? Because really that comma changes the whole thing.
Yep. Oh man, I wish I had one of those, an example of one of those, because I think I stuck with one of those typos because of that. But Josh, the other thing, kind of going back to what Dawn was saying about how she works with the actors, I think was another benefit from the originate and generate process. Because we're working with, we've had, a couple of different cast members, through the development, and in Dawn's way of facilitating the room, I think from the outside, as a writer, I feel that Dawn really empowers the actors tremendously. And I benefited from that, because when you have a room of empowered actors, especially, people who are just good people, like they're great actors, they're great professionals and great people. I feel that their ease in the room opened them up to different ways of asking questions and different ways of interpreting the text that, because we were early in the development process, I felt like, those questions, rather than make me feel uncomfortable because oh man, I have to respond to that, or can I respond to that? Will that work? Will it not work? because of the process, I'm like, oh, let me just take all of this in. Let me just hear everything everybody's saying. And I may or may not, make revisions based on that. But because Don had facilitated the space with these actors, the amount of information and feedback that I received was, tremendous.
And who are these actors, Don? Tell us who you've got in your deck.
Oh my goodness. Some of my favorite human beings, but especially some of my favorite Bay Area actors. So Nina is being played by Kathleen Ridley, who to me, she's like a local celebrity. And Thomas, her counterpart, is being played by Michael James Asbury. And I kid you not, just last week, I saw these two in Fences out in Sacramento. And I know these two have been doing shows together for 20 years. They are just a dynamic together. They are so great together. They've played every sort of human relationship, parent, child, husband, wife, exes. And they just, we're supposed to be moving away from the term chemistry. That's part of my intimacy training. We're supposed to be moving away from that term. But I don't have a better one to just tell you that like these two are fire together. And then, of course, another Aurora favorite, Sam Jackson, will play Raz. And our audiences just saw Sam in Father-Daughter as Miranda Risa, and heard Sam and Bluest Eye, and saw Sam in Exit Strategy and Splendor before that. And then a newcomer to Aurora is Annamarie Sharp, who is a rising star in the Bay Area. I saw her do Hieroglyph at SF Playhouse and was sold. That she had my heart. And she's just such a gifted actor. And she went to Cal Berkeley. So she's also an alum of the program. So we get that little extra little dramaturgical checks and balance in the room. And these four together have done several projects. So these four together also have a lot of shared history, both through some work at Aurora, but also work at SF Playhouse and Theater First and Lorraine Hansberry. So they really have a way of working together that also, I think, is cracking open the play. And we laugh and we joke. And in our most recent workshop that we did in December, we just had a great time. We broke a couple of rules too, because we definitely ate pie together and we weren't supposed to have communal food. That just went live, Josh. So Jenn is probably citing me right now.
That's my fault. I'm sorry.
I didn't say where we ate it. I just said we did eat it. And as private citizens, we can eat a pie together.
I love that you mentioned that she went to UC Berkeley and that this is a play set on the UC Berkeley campus. Cleavon, can you talk a little bit about writing a play that is so immediate to a place and a time?
Well, I think, part of it, we made the choice. Part of the choice was this is our community, and we want to own our community, speak to it, embrace our community, and so that was a part of it. And in doing so, you're kind of accountable to that community, and writing, knowing that, hey, I'm not setting it at some fictitious university and I can just make up things along the way, little things like getting the titles, people's titles correct, and just thinking about what's going on here. One, it helps, it helps in making it more specific and hopefully in being so specific, it can resonate, and more universally. But again, the biggest thing that it did is I am an area writer writing for my community, and hoping that in the way that I'm embracing my community and hoping that they can embrace us. And part of that, kind of goes back to the Flats, really, and just what that does. I don't know why, but mentally it just made me a little bit more proud of what I was writing. It made me feel a little bit greater sense of urgency in what I was writing. And so I think now that I've had the experience, if I ever were to write another play for a specific theater, setting it in that town is critical, because for whatever reason, just like that small, subtle mental shift, like just put a little bit more pride into the project.
Well, I'm really proud of this project. I'm really proud that Aurora is a place where members of the Bay Area community who are professional artists can come and tell stories that speak to the community of which they're a part. I think that's just really the most exciting thing a theater can do. And really, really proud of this project.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we start rehearsals on Tuesday. I'm so stoked.
Yes.
And we will eat all community food outside of the building as private citizens.
As private citizens, so I can still bake.
The union has very specific rules about our COVID safety policy, so we're going to follow them.
Yeah.
And tickets are on sale right now for the Incrementalist. You will be expected to show your vaccination status at the door and wear a mask throughout the performance. And we really hope that you can come and share in this really wonderful story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Josh, you got an advocacy spotlight from Cleavon, yes?
Yeah, Cleavon, can you tell us a little bit about why you suggested Umoja as our spotlight this week?
Umoja is a program that has been, it takes on different iterations at different community colleges in the area, but it is a program to serve, specifically to serve, to bring African-American centered pedagogy to different community colleges in the area, and provide student services, counseling, and academic support for the students who are in the program. They've done wonderful work. They've connected with the state chancellor's office, and through that connection, they even have created these scholarships for students going through their program to go to historically Black colleges and universities throughout the country.
Sounds just amazing. I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit about them so our audience can find out about them. Umoja, a Kiswahili word meaning unity, is a community and critical resource dedicated to enhancing the cultural and educational experiences of African American and other students. They believe that when the voices and histories of students are deliberately and intentionally recognized, the opportunity for self-efficacy emerges and a foundation is formed for academic success. Umoja actively serves and promotes student success for all students through a curriculum and pedagogy responsive to the legacy of the African and African American diasporas. And so we encourage you to check them out at umojacommunity.org. Cleavon, thank you for recommending what sounds like a really incredible organization.
It is an incredible organization. So thank you all for spotlighting them.
Happy to. Well, Cleavon, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back on the show, of course, later on. Once the show is up and running, we'll check in with you, and maybe you can come to the theater and do some of our in-person post-show discussions as well. I'm sure audiences would love that.
Yeah, looking forward to that. We'll be there. I have family coming in from Mississippi and Georgia, and Texas coming in to see the show.
Yes,
excellent.
Well, and Miss Roth from Sequoia sent a shout out in the chat saying she couldn't wait to see the show. So I hope Miss Roth from Sequoia rings a bell.
Oh, yes. That's Adia's first grade teacher. Oh, thank you, Ms. Roth.
How sweet. You definitely have a fan club in the chat. They're all excited to watch this episode and see the show.
Great.
So
Thanks so much, Cleavon.
All righty.
Well, as we mentioned, tickets are on sale for The Incrementalist and for Wives, the show following that, and This Much I Know after that, and our 22-23 season has subscriptions on sale as well. So please go to our website, auroratheater.org, to find out more about that. And while you're there, please check out that donate button up at the top right. And if you can help us out, we would really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. Stick around for some info on the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival. And we'll see you next month, where we are going to be doing an interactive town hall. We haven't found a better word for that, but you will be invited to join us in the conversation. You can be in the Zoom where it happens next month, April 22nd, the day after the Incrementalist opens, where we will talk about state-sanctioned violence, police violence. That episode is called Protest, Police, Protest. And we will interrogate the change here, right here locally at home, the incremental change here at home. So more information will be coming your way about that. And we hope you can join us for that. Again, that'll be Friday, April 22nd. And that will be an interactive Zoom. So thank you all for watching, and thanks for staying connected.
Cool.
tell us about the genesis of the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival?
Hi, I am Michaela Goldhaber, go by Mickey. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm coming to you from Ohlone Land in Berkeley, California. I have been devoted my life, my work to telling women's stories for as long as I can remember. And when I was in New York, I had a theater company, Flying Fig Theater, and our mission was to tell women's stories on stage through commissioning new works and rediscovering plays from the past. And we did many productions doing that, and it was wonderful. And I left New York, came back to the Bay Area, still very much about how do I tell women's stories? And I started finally writing the play I've been thinking about for a very long time. And then that play, The Lady Scribblers, it's about women playwrights who join forces with rebel actors to take on the tyrant of London theater. And that play took me to Raleigh, North Carolina for the Women's Theater Festival there. And they did a stage reading of it. And I went out because I have some friends there and just had an amazing time and thought, we have to do this in the Bay Area. They were having new plays by women every month, and this 24 hours of plays by women. It was incredible. And literally on the plane ride home, I posted on the Yeah, I Said Feminist Facebook group, which is something that Fontana Butterfield Guzman started, and a bunch of us have been really active in for a long time. I said, hey y'all, I'm gonna start a women's theater festival in the Bay Area. Who wants to join me? And within 20 minutes, we had a whole group of women to get together to do it. And Erin Merritt said, we can come over to my house. And we had a meeting and we had a plan. And that was in the summer of 2018. And we met and we started meeting monthly. And the premise that I put out was, let's ask all the companies that are already producing, is there a play by a woman or non-binary artist that you're considering producing? If not, can we help you find one? If so, would you consider committing to a woman or non-binary director and 50% women non-binary cast and design team? And then if you can do it in this window of time, then you can be part of the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival and we will promote you. And that was our invitation. And 40 theater companies said yes in various ways. And that's what we were going to do in 2020. Full productions, staged readings, a whole extravaganza of events from March 1st to May 30th.
My name is Erin Merritt, and I grew up in the Bay Area and had to spend a few years away, but my heart has always been here, and I'm very glad to be back. And I am a director and producer. Came up through acting and moved on up to trying to share a vision. Right. And that group of us who came together and said, yeah, we want to make this happen. We sort of split up into groups who were some people were just doing that promotion of the other productions that were happening. And then a few of us identified projects that we wanted to initiate ourselves as part of this festival. And Mickey decided she wanted to do a classical reading festival, classical women writing, shortly after Shakespeare or in response to Shakespeare, because we felt like Shakespeare companies are still the most inequitably cast shows because of the way the shows are written, right? And so what are the plays, and then the audiences for Shakespeare are also so specific, and a lot of them really aren't theater audiences so much as they are specifically Shakespeare or classical theater audiences. And so how do we give them something that's a kind of low-hanging fruit for them, something that won't be like shock them, but they'll go, oh, this is Shakespeare adjacent, so let's go see that. And Katherine, who we'll talk in a moment, started a BIWOC reading festival, and I was going to do something that we cannot do right now, hoping we'll be able to in the future, creating a 24-hour event where we had over 75 acts, over 200 artists in all three of the performance spaces in Brava, plus the hallways and even the bathrooms. We had people who were going to perform in the bathrooms, so that people could come and spend a whole 24 hours straight with us. But of course, the whole point of that one is to jam as many people into the room as possible. And so we're not doing that one right now. And I came to this similarly to Mickey in that I had a long history of asking to play male roles because they spoke more to what I wanted to portray, not because I wanted to be a man, but because the roles that were being programmed for women just weren't who I was at all. And that led to me starting an all-female Shakespeare company, which I ran for about a dozen years, 13 seasons. And then once I left there, I really started working on new work, and I'm very, very interested in the way that classical work and new work speak to each other. I've really seen some big changes in the way things are programmed, seasons are programmed, and the way women are hired, but we still got a ways to go, and so I'm still on that bandwagon, I guess.
Katherine Sebron. I'm curating the BIWOC Plus Play Reading Festival for the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival. I did theater for years. I was Actors Equity. I was in Equity for about 10 years. I was a stage manager and director. I was a founding member of the African American Shakespeare Company. I founded my own burlesque company and did that for several years. I was invited to the meeting at Erin's house. So I'm listening to all these wonderful plans for Bay Area Women's Theater Festival, and wanted to make sure that women of color's voices got heard, because oftentimes we don't get heard. So I'm like, well, if you're doing this play reading festival, why don't we do something specifically for women of color to amplify their voices, get women of color playwrights and directors, because I know as a women of color director, sometimes it's harder for us to get work, or we get pigeonholed. And I thought, so you know, I remember once, quick story. I remember once where I was contacted by a theater festival, like, hey, give us a proposal. What do you want to do? Blah, 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 blah. And they're like, you know what, you could do Colored Museum. This is how far back we're going. You could do that. Or you could do Susie Laurie Parks, which, you know, good stuff. These are things, but I'm like, I'm not limited to that. Anyway, so what I'm hoping for is producers and other people will come to these play reading series to realize that there are new works and there are other stories to be told, so that we can be more firmly within the theater community. That's what I'm up to.
Wonderful. And I know, Mickey, you mentioned that there was like a full, robust festival planned in 2020 that had sort of just gotten launched and underway, and then the pandemic and theater shut down. And I know you all were able to still continue some programming virtually, but this is like a return. So can you tell us a little bit about what people can expect from the festival this year, and then what your plans might be for 23?
Well, we were going to be doing these 2 reading series on Monday nights during the festival. And so coming back now, I literally I turned 50 and my sister asked me, what do you want for your 50th birthday? And I said, I want the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival.
And part of the thought is that we really we didn't get to have the proper presence and introduce ourselves in 2020 the way that we wanted to. And so this gives us a mini festival, gives us a chance to say, hey, this is the kind of thing we're doing, and look forward to a bigger thing next year. And we also knew that there might still be more closures, and there still might, right? So this was a manageable thing that we could always move to solely online if we needed to.
At Aurora, we are going to be hosting 4 of these readings, 3 from the Bywalk reading series and 1 from the classical women's reading series, which we're really excited about at Aurora. Those will be in person. So so the classical reading series is operating under a hybrid model where there will be some streaming only and then some in person. And the Bywalk reading series is doing a really cool thing where it's alternating. So there are readings happening in San Francisco, and then a reading of the same play will happen in the East Bay. And that's really cool. And Aurora is really honored to have been invited to participate and thrilled. On Monday night at 7 p.m., March 21st, at Aurora, we will host the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival Bywalk reading series, reading of Ida's Never Mind. We look forward to having you join us. Over the series of readings, we'll be hosting 3 of the Bywalk readings and 1 of the classical reading series between now and May 30th.
It was well received at Brava, so we're really looking forward to having it at the Aurora. It's just a lovely, she's a woman that's been married, so I hazard to call it a coming of age story, but I think it's a coming into her culture story. And as you know, like I felt connected to the story because, you know, as people of color, sometimes assimilation becomes the thing to survive and get through and be comfortable and be a part of. And I think she kind of finds herself and her culture within her journey. I love it.